and was disgusted by his own stupidity. But he could not do otherwise. For all that he prided himself on his iron self-control, the seventh man had never been able to control his ambition. Ambition rode the eunuch like lust rides a satyr. It had ridden him as far back as he could remember, since the days when other boys had taunted and beaten him for his castrated deformity. But above all, the seventh man was disgusted because the Malwa and the Roman reactionaries in the room had insisted on dining in the archaic tradition, instead of sitting on chairs at a table, as all sensible people did in the modern day. The seventh man's aged body had long since lost the suppleness to eat a meal half reclined on a couch. His name was Narses, and his back hurt. The Indian spymaster's eyes had been fixed on Narses from the moment he made the announcement. Months ago, Balban had realized that the eunuch was by far the most formidable of his Roman allies, and the only one who was not in any sense a dupe. The churchmen were provincial bigots, the royal nephews were witless fops, and John of Cappadocia, for all his undoubted ability, was too besotted with his own vices to distinguish fact from fancy. But Narses understood the Malwa plot perfectly. He had agreed to join it simply because he was convinced he could foil the Malwa after he had taken the power in Rome. Balban was not at all sure the eunuch was wrong in that estimate. Narses, in power, would make a vastly more dangerous enemy for the Malwa than Justinian. So Balban had long since begun planning for Narses' own assassination. But he was a methodical man who knew the value of patience, and was willing to take one step ahead of the other. For the moment, the alliance with the eunuch was necessary. And so— "What is your reaction, Narses?" he asked. The Indian's Greek was fluent, if heavily accented. The eunuch grimaced as he painfully levered himself to an upright posture on his couch. "I told you it was a stupid idea," he growled. As always, Balban was struck by the sound of such a deep, rich, powerful voice coming from such a small and elderly man. A eunuch, to boot. "It was not," whined Hypatius. His brother's vigorous nod of agreement was intended to be firm and dignified. With his cosmetic adorned and well-coiffed head bobbing back and forth on a scrawny neck, the nobleman resembled nothing so much as a doll shaken by a toddler. The eunuch fixed muddy green eyes on the nephews. Against his bony face, surrounded by myriad wrinkles, the effect was utterly reptilian. Deadly, but cold-blooded. The brothers shrank from his gaze like mice. Narses satisfied himself with that silent intimidation. Much as he was often tempted, Narses never insulted the brothers. One of them would be needed in the future for his puppet emperor. Either one, it didn't matter. Whichever summoned up the courage to plot with Narses to murder the other first. So, as always, the eunuch maintained formal respect, and allowed his eyes alone to establish dominance. "I told you all from the beginning that the plan was pathetic," he said. "If you want to assassinate a man like Belisarius, you had better use something other than common criminals." Ajatashatru spoke for the first time that evening. He was the Indian mission's chief agent, a specialist in direct action, a man of the streets and alleys where Balban manipulated from the shadows. His Greek was also fluent, but unlike Balban's, bore hardly a trace of an accent. Ajatashatru could, and often did, pass himself off as a Roman citizen from one of the more exotic outlying provinces of the empire. A dark-complected Syrian, perhaps, or a half-breed Isaurian. "It was a well-laid plan, according to the report," he murmured. His tone exuded calm, dispassionate assessment. Belisarius was ambushed shortly after landing in Barakucha, at night, in darkness, while he was alone without his cataphract bodyguards, by no less than 8 dacoits, seasoned killers, all of them. "Really?" sneered Narses. He was quite happy to insult the Malwa, within reason, so he allowed his lip to curl ferociously, but refrained from spitting on the polished parquet floor. "Tell me, Ajatashatru, I'm curious. How many of these, what did you call them? Oh, yes, seasoned killers, no less. How many of them survived the encounter?" 3, came the instant reply. They fled after Belisarius slaughtered the first 5, within seconds, according to the report.